Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is, in fact, my second part of the debate on the topic of did the Exodus happen as the Bible describes it. Now, Waldo, in his opening statement, said that one of the biggest reasons to doubt the Exodus is the lack of evidence. No evidence, we can't say it happened for sure. And one of the things he gave is that there was no evidence in particular for the 40-year journeying around in the desert of the Israelites. He said that we would expect to find things like fire spots, or I forget the exact words he used, but garbage dumps. So essentially, because the Israelites didn't leave a bunch of the crap everywhere, that's reason enough to doubt that the Exodus could have ever happened. However, assuming, of course, that the Israelites even would have had enough to leave behind, or that they just weren't very tidy people who wanted to preserve everything that they had that they could grab before leaving Egypt, the Israelites did leave one thing behind. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you at this point in time a man by the name of Dr. Adam Zertal. Dr. Adam Zertal was an atheist who decided to take the Bible and its claims about the Exodus at face value. He holds a PhD in archaeology, and he decided to go looking for evidence of the Exodus. Spoiler alert, he is now a Christian. At the beginning of his decision to take the Bible as factual in statements about the Exodus, he used those very statements to try to track down one important monument in the Bible about the Exodus, the altar of Joshua. Now, I really do hope I don't have to say this for a lot of you, but because I have heard this objection, I know there are some that I have to say it for. The fact that Dr. Adam Zertal used the Bible as a map of sorts to look for the altar of Joshua does not mean he was already a Christian. Ask yourself this: if you're a non-believer and you want to go looking for the altar of Joshua, what are you going to use? The only thing you can use, the Bible. I certainly hope nobody is desperate enough to try to dismiss this on the grounds that Dr. Adam Zertal was already a believer. Now, there are two mountains that are spoke of that the Jews went to during the Exodus: Mount Abel and Mount Sinai. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. In the Exodus story, after they fled Egypt and they're traveling to the Promised Land, they were to stand on one mountain and they would receive the promises of God. They would stand on the other mountain and they would hear the bad news of what would happen to them in the event that they were to disobey God. Now, Dr. Willie Dye and Dr. Don Patson, who are both great archaeologists — I'm not sure about Don Patton, but I'm pretty sure Willie Dye also has a PhD in archaeology — went along for the ride and decided to take the Bible at face value on its claims for the Exodus, hunting for the altar of Joshua. Now, the very first thing you'll notice about these two mountains is that they're rather far apart. The idea that one person could stand on one mountain and talk to the other person on another mountain, let alone a whole group of people, just seems so fiction. They're so far apart. But here they are in the middle of the desert. We've made it this far. Might as well test everything the Bible has to say. Dr. Willie Dye went to one mountain. Dr. Don Patton went on another mountain. And I must imagine he felt rather stupid doing it, but he shouted out, "Dr. Dye, can you hear me?" To which Dr. Dye responded, Yeah, I can hear you. In his own words, it was almost supernatural. The acoustics of the landscape made it so that you could, in fact, stand on one mountain and have a whole conversation with a person on the other mountain. That right there is already interesting enough, because just going off what you can see, you'd think the Bible had to be full of it when it talked about two people on a mountain talking to each other. But we're not done yet, because now, remember, we're here for the altar. The altar of Joshua was found, in fact, on Mount Ebal. We know this because the Bible gives specifics on how the Israelites were to build this thing. And it meets all those specifics, having no tool touch it and stuff like that. Now, there was immediately some objection to this. The objection was that, well, it's not an altar, it's a farmhouse. Now, there are no doors and there are no walls. Come to think of it, there's not even a roof. So, I think whoever built that farmhouse needs to be fired. Another objection was it's a watchtower. Again, no walls, no roof. It's not very tall, and it's built into the side of a mountain. So again, whoever built that watchtower needs to be fired ASAP. But the nail in the coffin for it's an altar, it's a farmhouse objection is what was found underneath this altar. It's exactly what you would expect, animal remains. Now this right here was the make or break point, because those animal remains were excavated and taken to the University of Zoology, the University of Hafta, and were tested by the zoology department. And everyone held their breath, because remember, if this is an Israelite altar, we need there to be Israelite animal remains under this. If we find things like in the results that they were eagles and they were snakes, this is a Canaanite altar, and that's not good. The altar of Joshua was not a Canaanite altar. Everyone held their breath. The test came back. And in the case of the animal remains found underneath the altar of Joshua, remains, you are kosher animals. And that's exactly what we would expect to find if this was the altar of Joshua. The remains of kosher animals. Things like sheep, pigs, animals, I don't think pigs. Animals that the Jews would have sacrificed. So I think we can end it here. It's not a farmhouse or a watchtower. It is in fact an altar. Looks like one, is built like the one, has the right animal remains underneath it. And what's really amazing is they were actually able to tell how old the animal was, which only furthered this is a Israelite altar, because the Israelites had a certain age range. They would want to give God the best. They would want to make it the right age of the animal. And came about the right age requirement for the Israelites. Now, another thing that Waldo brought up is, we just don't know when the Exodus truly happened. We don't know, we can't tell about. He also objected to the Israelites who left in the Exodus ever being in Egypt. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to say that there actually was some Egyptian scarabs found around this altar, as long as also some Egyptian pottery. When it was fluorescently dated, that's what you would want. You would want to use the right dating method for pottery, and fluorescent dating is the appropriate one to use for that. When they dated it that way, it came back to exactly the time that the Exodus is believed to have happened, about the time of Ramses II. But don't just stop there, because remember those Egyptian scarabs I just told you about? They were dated, inscribed with dates. No need to even date them. Somebody actually put the dates on these things, and they date to exactly around that time. The time of the Exodus, the time of the pottery, the time of about King Ramses II. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am far from done, but Dr. Adam Zertal was in fact asked, you made this great discovery. This is mind-blowing. What has happened as a result? And to that, Dr. Adam Zertal replied by saying, what has happened? Almost nothing. Ever since I published my work, all the scholars have been silent on the matter. Now, isn't that just the douchiest thing anyone could possibly do? You make this great discovery that changes the face of archaeology and biblical history and ancient history as we know it, and the scholars are just simply refusing to say anything? Why? Why would they not say anything? Well, it's because of where they are. They're in the Middle East. If you say that you think the story of the Exodus happened, you may recall in my first part I said the story of the Exodus is important for bigger reasons than we may realize. Well, blood has been shed over this matter. And it's a damn shame if it was a matter that never actually even happened. Some Iraqi leaders, Iraqi, Middle Eastern, Pakistani, they all are not too keen on the idea of the Exodus happening. So if you come out in support of the Exodus, you're not only taking on the consensus that the Exodus is all fictional and, there's no real history to it, but you also have to worry about some rather unhappy people in the land by where you are. But one of Adam Zertal's superiors said, if the Exodus did happen, then it is revolutionary and changes the face of everything we know. We all need to go back to kindergarten. I do not know I don't know where that man is today who said that, but I hope he found himself a very nice, comfortable kindergarten classroom. Maybe, one of the ones with the rugs in a circle that have the letters going around it. Maybe one where he gets recess and nap time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not done. There's a second part to this debate. But think of it. Waldo, we may not have found a trail of litter. Perhaps the Israelites didn't leave everywhere they lived looking like a pigsty. But of all the things that we would still expect to find some evidence of, because garbage can get buried, blown away, fireplaces can be eroded, and we're talking about something probably over 2,000 years ago. We still have this altar. And if you think not finding garbage and the Israelites not leaving a pigsty around everywhere they've been as a reason to doubt the Exodus, I wonder if you find this as a reason to believe the Exodus. Now, I know there's lots I didn't respond to. This is only part one of my two-part response set. After this, we have our closing statement, but I believe it's your turn now, Waldo.